There I was, a young woman in a miniskirt with long blonde hair, and I'd hit London. I wanted to find out who I was, and I'd been living in Banbury in a lovely house with a lovely husband and a lovely dad, but it wasn't working. And I think that was kind of the nature of the time, the zeitgeist, that women were waking up to their potential as separate from their menfolk. So this was 69 when I set out one Christmas Eve, 69, to slap up posters and say, I'm in trouble, I need help. I didn't know who to go to. It turned into Gingerbread. It's quite a lovely story. But the way that I found that name was quite mysterious. And I really do think that there is an energy in our universe that we can tune into, which we might call synchronicity. Germaine Greer, who was writing The Female Eunuch, somehow her researchers got hold of the fact that Gingerbread had just begun, and she included it in her chapter on revolution, to say that a woman called Tessa Fothergill had gathered together some women to empower ourselves and connect. And I now want to find those women, because it's a long time since Gingerbread got going, and it's changed out of recognition, really. It was very much a DIY concept of support, and we certainly didn't have the term single parent. Single parent came to be used much later, and Gingerbread eventually connected with something called the National Council for Single Parents, but that was much later. That was when we'd found that term, and it got applied to Gingerbread. Well, actually, I'm not so sure that it was such an appropriate term. The politicians used it in the years to come in a very degrading attempt at degradation of women on their own, instead of understanding that this was our time. But because I went out on that Christmas Eve and met some wonderfully generous people in a cafe called the Golden Age of Gingerbread, it all came together in my mind. And I think it went on to help thousands of, particularly women, I'm sure men too, and their children who will now be grown up. And there must be thousands and thousands of other people who were around at that time, struggling with patriarchy in their way. And let's document ourselves, let's put our stories together, because parenting is a struggle in a patriarchal system that rejects independent women, powerful women. Parenting is a sacred profession. Actually, the most powerful creatures, the most potentially empowered sections of humanity are the old women, and we've always known that. That's a traditional piece of knowledge, that by the time a woman comes into her full maturity as a crone, and we're so scared of that word, as a crone, she knows how the whole fits together. Of course, she has to have done a lot of work on herself. She has to have explored to have come to that understanding. But there are many of us, I'm absolutely convinced, like myself, women out there who want to support and enable and nourish future generations by being alive now to our deepest and most magical potential. We have such extraordinary powers that patriarchy will ignore and try to squash and crush, well, they won't. They just can't, because it's so powerful. And the politicians and the corporates and the worlds where the men attempt to rule supreme, they better know that they really need us. They really need the old women, the crones, the witches. You know, they tried to kill us. Do not underestimate the medicine women of this country and of Europe. And it's known throughout the world, the old women have something, an insight, which is deeply embedded in our tradition as human beings, that there's a time when a woman really comes into her power after she's lost her fertility in the biological sense. She comes into a new fertility. And isn't that scary for the guys? But no, it shouldn't be. It's actually, you know, here's a lovely man that he seems to know a thing or two. I'm not wanting to put down the men at all. I think they just need to understand that we women have something hot and spicy and deeply spiritual to offer. And all this repression and oppression will not do. You've got to stop. So I'm starting something called Women Inner Time. This will be old women working to enable ourselves and future generations to be more connected with the spirit and with the situation, the political situation that we find ourselves in as a member of this crazy self-destructing species. Ooh, just it's about evolving ourselves at every single level. So gingerbread, the spicy and the communion of gingerbread, I feel I'm evolving into women inner time with roots in the original gingerbread, which was about parenting, and it began before single parents were invented. That term did not exist. It just knew that women bringing up their kids without their menfolk needed the support of each other. And I find that that goes back to the way that human beings have always managed ourselves in the collective form. We brought up our children together, and the menfolk have supported the women very much so. And the women, as they got older and went into the grandmother stage, were honoured and respected as the people who could look back and look forward and teach young people how to be integrated into their parenthood. I think we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of recognition that we, without meaning to, do our children damage. And that can happen within the nuclear family. The nuclear family is not always an ideal container for parenting and bringing through the next generation. And it's a deep subject. But I would love to talk with you more. This is briefly where I'm at. I hope you hear what I'm saying. I say it with respect.